say we have more comments.
Really?
We're not going to start on time. We're getting some more chairs. Give me a minute. I do 6:30.
Okay, it's on.
I know.
Okay.
You can keep it right. We're getting some more chairs, so just give us a minute. So bring back
No, actually. We can fit more up front.
Yeah, let's put some more front because we're not going to need 23.
Just one.
Oh, they put that one up front, please. Oh, okay. I didn't want to mind these guys down with your
Picture. She's in the setback. She's at the airport going to Florida. It's my way back.
Thank you all for coming. We're going to start the meeting now. So I'd like to call the January 12th meeting to order. It is 6:33 now. If you could please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Any additions to the agenda? I have one. We're going to move 5.2, which is teacher presentations. We're going to move it to after the consent agenda, so it'll be 3.7. Other additions?
Yes, I have two. I'd like to revise 4.2 old business, SRO contract, second resolution. And then amended at 6.1 under personnel, Jared Gardner.
Any other additions or changes to the agenda? Need a motion to approve the agenda as amended? All those in favor? I need a motion to approve the minutes of December 8th, 2022 regular meeting and the special meeting of December 12th, 2022. Any discussion? All those in favor? Need a motion to approve the consent agenda, which brings us from 3.1 to 3.6 as recommended by the superintendent. Any discussion on treasurer's report, consideration of claims, budget amendment, transportation report, cafeteria report, or mileage reimbursement?
I think this is the first time I've ever seen a budget amendment like this. Is it, I mean, it's not something that happens routinely.
No.
No.
I can elaborate on that a little bit.
Yeah.
This is from the insurance claim that we had that dated back to May of last year. We had the pipe break damage to the library.
Oh, okay.
So unfortunately, it was kind of a lengthy process to get quotes for the repairs down on the terrace level. And normally, if we were to have an insurance recovery like this is significant as far as the dollar amount. And this is more precautionary as we look at the 22-23 budget, is to not exceed the total budget that was authorized. It likely wouldn't put us over, but in case it was going to, by increasing the budget, it protects us from that problem. So, and in talking with our auditors, better to do it now, as this was being wrapped up, than to do it as a journal entry and then retroactively in June if needed. So, yep.
Awesome. Thank you.
Any other discussion on the consent agenda? All those in favor?
Right.
3.7, I can remember what number it is. Teacher presentations. We're going to turn this over to Mrs. Coddington, sorry.
That's okay.
Oh, yes, we're both on there. I just think. My apologies.
Hi everyone. We are here to present our summer curriculum project that we worked on over the summer and really carried over into our year. And it's something that we're both really passionate about and we've been talking about for a while. We have been thinking and talking about child development as well as thinking about the world that our children are currently experiencing and the needs that they've been having. And actually, pre-COVID, we had started a conversation with the district about play-based learning and play-based kindergarten. And so it seemed now more than ever that this was a really important step to focus on. So all of us here acknowledge the importance of social-emotional learning. We know about social development and peer relationships and how they can really be a key for students, given what's been happening in the world, but even without that. We also know that kindergarten students need help in their gross and fine motor skills and executive function. We also really wanted to be sure that our program was developmentally appropriate and meeting the children where they were. We also had a need to differentiate our ELA curriculum to meet our students' strengths and the weaknesses. So all the things made this project really important to us.
So some of the things we did is we researched play-based practices, especially through a blog. One of our favorite blogs was this blog by Kristen Peterson, who does a play-based learning blog. We read some books, Free to Learn by Peter Gray, Purposeful Play by many authors. And we read a lot of educational websites about how they go about doing play-based learning. So we had to rework the beginning of our school year to allow more playtime, and we started to slowly increase student materials and let them explore things. So we didn't start out, hard into our lessons of the workshop model and things like that, but we definitely took our time introducing them to different materials. So we thought about ways to make our curriculum more play-based. We made it more, our learning groups more of an invitation to join the group experience. We created some small group experiences, and in order to say something is play-based, it has to be child-chosen. So we worked on a language to invite them to activities, like, I'll be on the rug playing this if you would like to join me, or I'll be at the table working on this if you would like to join me. And we saw many kids want to join us all the time. So we implemented a morning routine where we did something called a check-in. And during this check-in, we checked for social-emotional learning and social-emotional issues, and we also looked at academic things. And we had it as a way to kind of settle them into the day by checking in with each student and letting them know that they can use the materials that were at the tables in any way they wanted to. And let me tell you, they came up with many great ways to use these materials. It was very academic, like play is work and work is play. So we created center activities that met our standards for kindergarten, that were child-friendly, play-based, and we used materials that would be high interest to the students. For example, we have these alphabet letter beads that we stuck in this bin of colorful rice, and we gave to the students. And they could use a pre-made alphabet sheet to mark off the ones they found. They could just take the beads out. We didn't tell them how to use it. They came up with so many different ways to use it. They, took the alphabet letters out, and some kids were putting them in order, and then there were even some kids that were making words out of the letters. Mostly their names at the beginning of the year, but there were some that could make other words. So like they came up with their own way to use these materials. So that was very encouraging to us. So.
So we made a little presentation just to show off our awesome classes because we're super proud of them, and to tell you a little bit more about Play-Based Kindergarten. And the key here is you're going to see in the pictures, even though like there's a focus here, look in the backgrounds too, because you can see so much else going on there. And that's really what Play-Based is about. It's about child-chosen, child-directed, teacher as a facilitator. So here we have some children playing with kinetic sand, making up stories with farm toys, children at writing centers. I love this little guy back here. Children coloring and doing lots of different things. She has a whiteboard. I'm not quite sure what she's doing, but it's something fun at the writing table. Thank you. So one of the things we really started out with our presentation, or with our curriculum project, was asking ourselves, like, what do we think play is, and then really diving in and reading about it. From our college years, we know about Piaget, and he says that play is the work of childhood, and it certainly is. And of course, Mr. Rogers, everyone's favorite person, says it's often talked about as if it were relief from serious learning, but for children, play is serious learning. And you can see some examples here of lots of different types of play. Thank you. So some of the types of play that we see on a regular basis in our classroom are constructive play, which is building things, drawing, making music, and just generally creating things. Not only just creating things physically, but when and it's so funny, I don't know if you hear it all the time, they'll say to each other, okay, now pretend you're this and I'm this. And there's actually no props involved, they're just talking to each other. And obviously that's building language. And they're walking around the room with this whole scenario going on in their heads. Pretend you're this and that, and it's really fun to see. Of course, physical play is everybody's favorite. And we know that builds gross motor, fine motor skills, muscles, bones, coordination, and it's also super fun. And you should come down. I've got some amazing hula hoopers. Love the balancing. The floor is lava. That's the floor is lava. Here's the letter bins. This group of children wanted to scoop them, and they used a little sand strainer to get rid of the rice and see what letters they get. And so they were dotting. But some of them also did choose to put them in alphabetical order or make words, like you were saying, children playing a game and another game. So now sometimes people might say, well, that's not play, that's a game. But these kids had free time and they have their all their choices, and this is what they chose to do. These two chose to sit down. They're following the rules of the game, taking turns of whose turn it is, remembering the rules of the game, and that's why it's play-based, because they chose to do that.
All right, I'll keep doing it.
And then this is that fantasy play we were talking about, and that really builds your language, it builds your communication. Children can use props to act out roles, or they can just use their imaginations. Puppets are all of a sudden a really big thing this week. It's really interesting, I don't know if you see that, how certain things become of interest. And this week we've had lots of puppet shows going on. And then he was ordering up his eggs, sunny side up over here. And playing teacher is always a really fun thing. And usually after a session of teacher play, I have to look all around and find my teacher tools because they love using teacher tools.
No, I can't.
Okay. This really resonated with us because it kind of ties the idea of play and the family and child development and school. And the Harvard University Center on the Developing Child says that the science of child development points to 3 core principles that guide our society and what we need to do to help children and families thrive. Supporting responsive relationships, strengthening core life skills, and reducing sources of stress. And obviously, play is so key in all of those things. And so that was really resonated with us.
See, now it's
I know. Play is the road to childhood happiness and adult brilliance.
Look at this math lesson going on here that they wanted to
Do you see
build.
they built something
Taller
taller
than
than
Mrs. Coddington. That took a while.
And I know Nope, he wasn't asked to clean. He chose and he cleaned under every single table and pushed the chairs out and pulled them back and was just so organized about it and happy as can be and getting so much sensory from that as well as all that coordination and stuff. Yeah, I think so.
So what we noticed, a majority of the kids chose to join in our large group or our small group activities, our invitational groups. Those who did not at first may have gave us one refusal, but then they later joined in. The activities that we do are highly engaging, and the students usually cannot wait for their turn. So it's rare that a student will say, no, I don't want to do that right now. Well, they might have had another thing on their mind about like Legos or something else that they want to do first, but they always end up coming. The students build strong relationships with their peers. They learn to cooperate, they learn to share, find peers with common interest, make plans with their peers for something they can continue the next day, like an activity like, can we leave this here until tomorrow? Like a lot of times that happens with block building and Lego building. Can we leave this here until tomorrow? Of course you can. They're able to engage in play for a sustained amount of time without boredom. You come in our classroom, you never see kids that say, I'm bored, I have nothing to do. They are building their stamina for the future when they have teacher-led activities. They engage with books on their own and writing books on their own, and this year we noticed a lot of that with the kids. You know, since we started out with such a play-based program, the kids were like, Mrs. Coddington, when can we have more than one page to make a book? I'm like, oh, you can have it anytime you want. But like, they came to me first before I even taught a lesson that you can have multiple pages in your book. And students started doing things in play that we hadn't taught them yet. And parents are telling us that their kids love to come to school. Like this year, I think more than ever. Yeah. And parent conferences, parents were like, my kid loves coming to school, and we see that on them when they come down the hall. They can't wait to get to our classroom. They're running down the hall, and then they're always peeking in the classroom to see what we already have out for them, you know, because they want to know what's to come, and they get so excited, and they'll go out and tell their friends, oh, we get to do this today, we get to do this today. So it's exciting to have kids be excited about school.
And I would just echo, as a conclusion, we really have noticed that this stamina in play and focusing on these activities has carried over now that we are building more of our traditional routine and our workshop model into their day. We're seeing it more easily transfer into the reading, writing, and math workshop. They know what to do if they're not sure what to do. They can occupy themselves in lots of ways. One of the things we also discovered in our research was play schemas. And it really kind of helped us understand what children get out of different kinds of play. Like, you know, when you're like a mom and you're looking at your kid and you're like, why are you jumping in that mud puddle? Like, it made us just stop instead of asking those questions and saying in our head, well, why are they doing that? So someone walked into my room and for some reason scarf throwing was like really a big thing. And that's the trajectory schema of play. And what are you learning in that? Well, you're learning force and motion. You're learning when you do something, what's the reaction. And it's just really been interesting to think about all their play from that point of view. My hula hoopers are working on that rotational schema. My friends who are building Lego and block enclosures for the dinosaurs and the animals are, you know, working on that constructive, and they're noticing what things fit. And it's just really made us look at and really see the value in what they choose to do every day. So it's been really, really valuable.
Our global day of play for the whole district is February 1st. And guess what? Kindergarten cannot wait.
All right.
Any questions for us?
I want to go to
So what does check-in look like? How does it work?
It could be many different things, like, one day we had little post-its with our names, and we had some pictures of different emojis of facial expressions, and we're like, hey, how you feeling this morning? And they would take their name and they just put it under the emoji that they felt like. They're very honest. And we did that multiple times because, you feel different on different days. Yeah, and then we've done other things with academic type things, Ooh, can you make a pattern for me? And I made a pattern, can you extend my pattern? And they just think it's fun. It's just a way for us to check in, and we get academic information from that too,
So we did like shapes, name your shapes for us really quickly so we could see very easily within 20 minutes who already knew their basic shapes, who didn't know their basic shapes. Numbers, recognizing numbers, counting. I mean, there's so many different things that we've done.
Name writing.
Yeah, and now we're kind of working, it does look a little bit more academic. The check-in is like name writing or color this book to add to your book bin now because we've just started getting our own book bins with our little leveled readers and decodable texts in there. So lots of different things, and it progresses.
And just think about it, they love that one-on-one time.
Yeah.
It's a very special time.
Well, so it is one-on-one. That was going to be my
Yes.
question. So
One-on-one, they love it.
Sure.
Thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And everybody in the room probably misses kindergarten.
See a lot of former kindergartners.
Students are here.
So Mrs. Merrick, I don't know if you saw, but it works a little different than the Promethean board. It's not a touch, it's a swipe.
It's a swipe, okay, I can do it.
Or you can use the keyboard, the arrows.
Oh, that's a lot easier. Okay, so hi, thanks for having us. I'm Mrs. Merck, and I brought with me some friends today from the Bigs and Littles program. And this is Senna. I have Claire. They're both in 8th grade. 6th grade, I'm so sorry, 6th grade. I have Veronica and I have Kyrie from 2nd grade. And we're here to talk about this Bigs and Littles program. So the Bigs and Littles program was an idea that started off as a mentorship idea to build community and connections between elementary and secondary students.
Use the left and right arrows.
Oh,
you could just do the keyboard.
There you go.
Okay, so it started with an invitation at Forum, and I spoke with the middle school and high school students about the opportunity to build a relationship with an elementary student and serve as a role model. The commitment was to meet with your little once a week for at least 15 minutes during a study hall. And we made sure to talk about how academics come first, and sometimes those meetings would need to wait if there was studying that needed to be done. The kids had some choice with that. To participate in the 2nd, 3rd, or 4th quarters, or all of the quarters, depending on what they were interested in and their academic schedule. And that it was an opportunity to practice leadership skills, develop soft skills like communication, active listening, time management, empathy, building confidence. It could also be used for National Junior Honor Society hours or National Honor Society hours. It would look great on a college or job application, and that of course it would be fun and rewarding to work with a younger student. So I hung this paper on my door with 15 slots, and I was just really hoping that I had 15 secondary students who would sign up for this program. Lo and behold, yes, 74 students signed up to participate through all of the 4 quarters. And so to accommodate this, elementary teachers welcomed Bigs in a way that worked for their classrooms, that met their students' needs and worked for their grade level and their classroom. So that looked like maybe a whole class buddy. It looked like buddies for the whole class in one case. Or recommending students to receive a buddy. So the elementary teachers made some decisions and we went forward. Sana, would you like to read this slide?
Yeah.
The Bigs were required to attend one training that was available every day for 2 weeks at lunchtime. They all completed the training, which was focused not only on program expectations, but also offered tips on how to interact with younger students inappropriately join an elementary classroom.
All participants filled out a Google form with their availability and were matched with the younger student.
This is Trin, and she, with her little, big with a little. Would you like me? Heidi, would you like to read this one for us? This is what Trin says about the program.
I decided to be part of the Big Buddy, Little Buddy program because I enjoy hanging out with kids. Also, it's just such a cool idea. You get the chance to connect with kids that you normally wouldn't connect with. You get to learn about your buddy and they get to learn about you. It's been so fun.
Thank you, Heidi. And what Rosalie McAllister has to say. She's a senior.
The best thing about being a buddy to Mrs. Miller's whole class is working with such polite kids and seeing their friendly faces when I first walk in. And the most rewarding part to me is being able to help them and Mrs. Miller, even if it's just a little bit.
Rosalie McAllister.
Do you guys have any questions?
We're almost ready for questions. Thank you. I'm sure we have some questions. So Mrs. Miller also added to that the Bigs and Littles program is such a lovely way to help our children connect and feel seen. The interactions are gentle and sweet, often ending in hugs. Having big kids spend time in our room is time we all appreciate. And that's what Mrs. Miller wanted to say. Scooch right here, Kyrie, excuse me. And then I had some shout outs here at the end. First and foremost, the elementary teachers. Their dedication to their students' mental health and their flexibility in allowing the older students to come into their classroom and accommodate their schedules has been absolutely wonderful. I appreciate so much the participation from elementary teachers. The Bigs have done a stupendous job. I believe that the level of participation says a lot about our school climate at HCS and our middle and high schoolers' interest in connectivity. And of course, the littles, their trust in the Bigs that they will show up once a week and be a friend and have a relationship. So there are some pictures showing some of the activities. Sometimes it's academic, sometimes it's playing a game, sometimes it's just sitting and talking, sometimes it's for a short amount of time, and sometimes it's for the entire study hall period, depending on what everybody needs. So we were wondering if your questions, if you have any, could be directed toward our Bigs and Littles.
First, I'd like to start by saying thank you. It takes a lot, especially for you littles, to come to a meeting like this and to speak in front of us. And I'm really, really proud of all four of you for being here and for spending the time with us tonight to tell us about this program. My question for all four of you, to answer individually, is what is your favorite thing to do with your big or your little?
Who would like to start? So, Veronica.
My favorite part is after I read my poem to the whole class, Mrs. Patella lets us go out to the hallway and work on my Chromebook and show her some stuff on my Chromebook and just explore on my Chromebook.
That's a lot of fun. Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Irene, would you like to share? What's your favorite thing to do with your buddy?
My favorite thing to do with my buddy, McKinley, is hang out with her and show her my presentation.
I bet that she really likes to see your presentation. Thank you for sharing. What about the Bigs? What is your favorite thing to do with the littles?
My favorite thing is to seeing like what they like to do in their free time and learning about like which subjects that they're learning about.
My favorite thing is playing games with them and seeing how they always win.
Those are all my questions. Everybody else.
That would have been my question too. So you beat me to it.
What's Mrs. Merck's favorite?
Oh, my favorite thing, this is an easy one. My favorite thing is when the bigs pop their head into the SEL room and say things like, "This is the best part of school for me," or "I had so much fun, thank you." Or I pass them in the hall and they have a permanent pass that they have every week, and they say, "I've had to see my little." So it's just nice to see. I wasn't anticipating as much excitement out of the bigs. I was expecting more from the littles, and I see so much from both ends, but the bigs are really appreciating the time with the littles and finding it valuable.
Well, thank you all for being here. And we moved you guys up in the presentation because you get to leave if you would like to. You're more than welcome to stay. But
The
if
bigs
you
and littles, not the others.
Class is here for the duration.
I was just saying. Class
Yeah, I have to drive. Thanks for coming. What time do you get home?
sorry that you guys don't come in too, but they get to go to bed. Kids don't go to bed. Alright, well that was wonderful. It brings us to old business. Board discussion is actually not going to be here on the 9th of February, so I will not be here for the board meeting. If you guys would like to hold a meeting without me, I am totally and completely fine with that. If you do not want to, I just want to pick a date without you. So, I thought we should.
I guess I would ask, there's a possibility there might be a committee presentation. Would you like to be present? Or is it not?
There might be a scheduling committee presentation.
No, it's fine. I mean,
I'm fine moving it too. I'm fine doing it. Just if we move it a week earlier, that's the second, that's Groundhog Day, so I don't know if anybody observes that.
the second I can't do it because I have a BOCES board meeting. There's no feeling.
I don't mind moving it.
I can do the first, I can do the 6th,
Now, let me ask this question. Talking about that committee, are they like expecting this board meeting to be that date? Or
No, we have not.
they haven't done it?
No.
Again,
I'm fine with that. What do you?
I said I'm fine with that either. I will be here if we don't want to change it from the meeting, but I'm more than happy.
Can we do it the day before?
I think you should be,
I mean, you could.
if we're
but I
having
won't
the
be there.
scheduling meeting presentation, I think Michelle should be here. I think
I
it's
think so
important.
So the 1st or the 7th? I don't know what we have on the school calendar. I only have certain sports.
So
on here.
there is.
What about the following Thursday, the 16th?
We can push it out. 16th?
There will be nothing that has to get done by a certain date.
Yeah, we don't have any.
No, I mean, we're gonna be getting into budget discussion, so for that purpose solely, a week later would be better than a week earlier.
Okay, so the 16th is 16th for
For
me.
me.
Everybody is here.
If anything came up that was important, I guess we'll always schedule a special meeting.
Okay, so,
Does that work with all the administrators? Because it's only be the following Thursday?
Well, I mean, I just wouldn't get into habit. I know it's unavoidable sometimes to moving board days because we do have special education students that we make recommendations for that their new program would start the day after because you approve it. So I do have a student whose special education is supposed to start on the 10th because it would be approved on the 9th.
Can I throw
It's
this
just
idea out
something to
there?
put out there.
What if, whenever the scheduling committee wants to do a presentation, would it be worth considering that as a special meeting?
We can do that.
I'm also fine, I'm fine with not. I mean, I am informed on things and I can follow up after the meeting and,
No, I think you should do that.
I agree.
Especially,
but we can do a special meeting.
So have our regular
Let's
meeting.
keep our policy committee meeting on the 9th, and then if we need to do.
Yeah, we could do we have a
one person get one other person in here.
For my purposes, if you moved it earlier, it would not have any effect on what I'm doing. If you move it later, now I have to go in and amend that one particular IEP. So if you moved it early, it would not be a
We
problem.
could just approve yours, we could do a special meeting for
To
yours.
approve
We have
the
to have
special
policy
education
committee
budget.
meeting that day, so we could just come.
Yeah, I
Keep
agree.
policy on
Okay.
that.
That would help.
Okay,
Does
so
that work,
policy
Tanya?
night
So we'll just coordinate.
and special meeting.
If needed.
Well, it sounds like we need it.
Might as well, anything.
Yeah, they'll just plan.
Yeah, I do have one student
Okay,
that's sure
yeah,
this
let's just
is
plan
new
on it.
referral.
Short one. And then,
And then either.
full meeting on the 16th.
Now back to my question, the administrators, does it look like they'd be able to be here that Thursday? Seeing two headlines.
16th.
So I need a motion to approve the amendment of the February board meeting to have a policy meeting and special meeting on the 9th and a full meeting on the 16th of February.
Aye.
All in favor? All right, thank you, sorry.
Good.
Yeah. Thank you.
You send calendar.
Yeah. All right, 4.2, the SRO discussion. In order to start the discussion, we'll make I will ask for a motion, so we can discuss, and then we'll go from there. I need a motion to rescind the previously approved motion on September 8th, 2022, to enter into an agreement with Madison County Sheriff's Office for school resources services during the 2022-2023 school year as recommended by the superintendent. Discussion, I'd like to start the discussion. The reason why we are rescinding this is because there is a proposed next motion. The next motion is to discuss a new contract that we'll have set forth in front of us. This wipes away what we did before to make sure that everything is clean and in order. So that's the purpose of this motion. Any other discussion for this motion?
So voting in favor of this motion allows for the possibility of a new motion to be presented.
Other discussion on this motion? I saw your hand up.
No, I'm just
Jumping in the
seeing
next
that the second motion was rewritten, I'm just trying to read that, that's all. I'm trying to understand that, that's all. I'm good with the first one, sorry.
This will be a roll call vote, and Jody will roll call.
Ms. James?
Aye.
Mr. Dupas?
Aye.
Mrs. Larson?
Aye.
Mrs. Jones?
Aye.
Mrs. Jacobson?
Aye.
Thank you.
Now, in order to discuss the next piece, we need a motion. A motion to approve the authorization of the superintendent on behalf of the district to enter into a municipal cooperative agreement with the County of Madison through the Office of the Sheriff, by which Hamilton Central School District wishes to secure the services of a school resource officer for the remainder of the 2022-2023 school year. This approval will be for the contract in final form negotiated by the attorneys representing both the district and Madison County, and as recommended by the superintendent. We need a motion.
I will move.
I'll second.
Now, discussion. The contract in its final form, because what we were given in our packet was all the suggested changes. And they didn't hit approve all, when you're doing the edits. And they need to do that, and if there's any other word tweaks or anything like that, we will have to come back. So that's why the motion states final form. That just to
Is
open
what's
up-
here right now different than what was there a couple of days ago?
Where?
Just sent a final one today.
Okay, so what's on board docs? Is it different than what was there a couple of days ago?
Did you update the board.com?
Okay, so what I looked at a couple of days ago is different than what's here right
Correct.
now.
Yeah, that is, what's on there now is what you would be voting on.
Okay, so I need a moment.
Yep.
I think Bill did give a bit of an explanation too in his email of how
Right. But, okay, so go ahead and say what you want to say, if there's something you want me to read it first.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Yep.
Again, all of the changes from what I have are in red.
Yes. Yep.
Yes, please, thank you.
That's what they need here.
Yes, it is.
Thank you, Jody.
Usually cool.
We get cold in June.
Well, no, just a question. This is SPO, we've been saying SRO, what would it say if somebody is hired?
The contract is an SPO, and that allows the county to hire a retired sheriff, a corrections officer. They are actually an SRO and trained as an SRO.
That's what we're
And that's what we will, although the contract says SPO, we're hiring an SPO, or an SRO, sorry.
If I recall, all SROs are SPOs.
Yes.
Okay, so walk me through that, in that it is a special patrol officer who is then trained to be a school resource officer. Does it say that anywhere in this agreement? It talks about them being trained, it never actually specifies how what training is they're doing. Oh good, I'm glad that was added. You.
So that's one of my questions. This contract doesn't specifically outline training, but it doesn't prohibit us from requiring certain training.
It does not.
We provide on our.
Yep, and I've clarified with the sheriff, we can require any additional training above and beyond what the county provides. So we would onboard the exact same way we do with any employee. They would be, we could require them to go through all of our restorative practices, all of our DEI training, all of our professional development that we deem fit for the SRO. So anything above and beyond, we can require.
And provide.
And provide.
And we'll be training our own staff on how to interact with the SRO, what's appropriate uses and referrals.
Mm-hmm.
And do we know what their training is? What the content of that?
Yes, so they go through implicit bias training, they go through cognitive behavior training, developmentally appropriate training for youth. There's a whole series of things that we've talked about in the past that they would have to go through.
Do we have that in writing anywhere? I understand it's not part of this agreement.
It's not in writing in the contract.
And this contract would go through the school year, not the county fiscal year.
That's correct.
What was that?
I said this contract would go through the school year, not the county fiscal year.
Right.
So we would bring it back to the board in the July meeting,
Yes.
discuss at that point, remembering that this is a month-to-month deal.
Yeah, you have a 30-day out clause.
With 30-day out. So if something feels wrong, if we choose to go this direction, if we choose not to go this direction, still bring it up in July if we want to, and go from there. Again, I wrote to you guys when this board docs came out, Phil has spent a lot of time on this. I think well stated, for 5 months, we've done a lot of good work on this.
This goes back to June of last year.
And so, but I do think that we need to pivot it at this point. So pivot being, we need to wait until July or not, in July, or we need to.
Yeah, I agree.
And we talked about, in one of the, like the example contracts from our attorneys, they talked about data gathering and data analysis. What are our plans with regard to that?
So,
Measuring outcomes.
under responsibilities of the district, under G, evaluating the program and administering annual assessment, we can identify any data, we can log data, we can do surveys, whatever we want to do internally to assess the program and the effectiveness of the program, we can do that.
I think in our, because it also, some of the practices we see that are best is, training of staff and training of, informing the public. So I think having very clearly, here's how we're going to measure the outcomes, here's what we're going to be looking for, would be really useful information for parents and for staff to have. And then year to year, knowing this is what's being measured. And maybe the inclusivity committee can have some insight as well.
Do you have a sense now of what those pieces would be that you would be looking for in terms of assessing the program?
I do. I would ask the SRO keep a log of student interactions, looking at discipline referrals, either they're going up or they're going down, behaviors, how the SRO is being used by staff. I think surveys are appropriate. What is the effectiveness? What is your relationship of the SRO with the SRO? So I think all of those indicators, I think, will be taken into account and measured to determine if this works for us.
This is a question for you. This is me asking you a question about what are you hoping this changes?
I'm hoping this provides a level of security. I hope that it provides a level of comfort, not only to our students, but our faculty and staff. It's not preventable, but if you look last week, we had a 6-year-old shoot a teacher.
Understand?
And
Not here.
Not here.
No.
But
Well, you
these
didn't
are
phrase that well.
these are
Sorry.
things that are going on in our nation, and I think it's my job to look at every resource to provide safety and security for our students, faculty, and staff. And this is just another layer to provide.
Do any of those assessments that you just laid out measure that?
Yes.
Do we have a baseline measure of that?
We have a baseline measure of our suspensions, our discipline referrals.
Our sense of safety?
Our sense of safety?
Students, parents, teachers, staff?
We have, from our staff, we have not surveyed students. We can certainly survey students.
Yeah, I'm just, if we're instituting a program looking for an outcome, it's hard to know if you've changed your status if you don't know what your baseline is. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes
Do you
sense.
understand that?
So just to make the comment too, and I think this comment has been made before, it's, yes, there's definitely measurements and assessments that can be done. But I think it's one of those things, it's hard to know what you prevent if something doesn't happen because something is over.
Right.
So,
So this contract would get us, if approved, this contract would get us through this school year. If next year's school board decides that they would like to do this again, it doesn't mean that this particular contract necessarily would be it. There could be, the district could push for certain changes in that time.
They could, however, we know from the last 3 months that the county is not accepting.
I understand that.
I wanted to
Yeah.
say, yes, we
Yeah.
could. However,
In speaking with my
we
colleagues,
can't say that it would happen.
I understand that, but I guess the point I'm trying to establish is that it doesn't mean that things couldn't be tried to get changes in the future. How that happens, who knows? For right now, we're just talking about it.
Well, and one of the responsibilities of the district, if you look, like H is make recommendations and program adjustments as appropriate. And then the letter before that is they are gonna have us evaluate the program and administer an assessment. So they may, you know, if every district is recommending this one piece, they may decide to add that. So I think it's important too for us to advocate for certain things if we feel passionate about that.
People could contact the county if they wish. Bill, we interrupted you, I apologize. You were talking about colleagues in neighboring districts?
yeah, who have tried to make some changes and the county has denied them. So,
Do you know what changes they've tried to make?
not specifically, I didn't include the specifics.
I'm just checking in.
What?
That's what I was checking on. Keep going.
So the pieces I am looking at are legal obligations from NICEAD about what we should be doing with an SRO, and then the best practices that exist out there when hiring an SRO. I've already expressed all of my concerns in the past, so I'm not bringing anything new. The one piece I have to, so as I'm working through this, like, what I can see is we can fulfill our obligations, not in the contract, but in our district's requirements for what we do. I don't feel like we can meet state ed requirements in the contract because the county is unwilling to accept our input. So I struggle just right up front, really, with my legal requirement according to NICEAD. However, if we can bring those pieces to play by our requirements, I can feel good about what we're doing. So that's where I am. And most of these pieces I'm working through, I feel like we can do. My one question, so as I'm moving through this, is a mechanism to receive complaints about something that has occurred with the SRO. Is that mechanism, I don't think it's part of the contract. It would be a mechanism that we would build
Internal mechanism that we build.
in-house.
I think that needs to be very proactive. If it's just a passive, here's a place to put your, complaint box. I think that's not gonna get all the concerns. Does that make sense? I think we're gonna have to be more active about seeking feedback.
Actively seek it out instead of waiting for people to.
I don't think silence is.
And not just,
Right.
not just concerns, but, things
Right.
they like possibly too.
But I do think the changes here do allow flexibility, but would you mind spelling out more about the legal requirements that you're concerned about?
A school district or charter school that employs, contracts with, or otherwise retains law enforcement or public or private security personnel, including school resource officers, shall establish written contract or memorandum of understanding that is developed with stakeholder input, including but not limited to parents, students, school administrators, teachers, collective bargaining units, parent and student organizations, community members, etc. Such a written contract, and it goes on to say what that contract should define, which is a relationship between the school district and the law enforcement agency, etc. Should be consistent with the code of conduct, define law enforcement and security personnel's roles. I mean, I think most of that fits in. The piece I struggle with is this contract does not take into account stakeholder input.
Is it requiring
but it
district
doesn't the way it
stakeholder?
should. I think it does to the degree we can.
Right.
In the confines of the county.
Right.
Which I don't think is ideal.
Right, but if we are able to add our own requirements, then I feel like I can in good conscience say we are taking our stakeholders' concerns, and we can take best practices, and we can institute them on our side, even though it's not in the contract. I mean, to me, those are the pieces that are absolutely critical. We need to be able to take stakeholder input and apply it. Otherwise, this violates everything we should be doing.
And I think I shared last month, the Chittenango superintendent requires they have multiple SROs to go through the New York State mentoring program. So those are things that we can do as a district.
Right,
And they have the support of the sheriff.
right.
I want to make a comment too about the mechanism for evaluating. And first of all, I think we need to have a mechanism in place to evaluate every single staff faculty member in the school. If a child is feeling uncomfortable, we need to have mechanisms for that. But I think in saying that, I just want to say this out loud, that we don't want to explicitly solicit like just negative feedback. We're gonna have this person coming in here thinking that, oh, all eyes are on me, so if I, double step my walk, somebody's gonna, like, I wouldn't want that person to feel like they were being spotlighted because, this district has been going through controversy for several months and now, they're explicit, they've never instilled this feedback before, but now all of a sudden from my position, they're continuously asking questions in a negative way. Like Travis said, I think we need to solicit positive things that are happening as well as negative if we decide to go forward.
Yeah, I don't think any soliciting of feedback should have any sense to either way. It should just be to get the feedback. What I'm saying is it should be, we can't consider silence to be approval. And that there's
Right.
things just because we're not hearing.
I just wanted to say that out loud, but if we go forward with this, I don't want somebody to come in here and just feel like they're set up for failure from the beginning.
Right, no, and I agree with you, and I agree exactly with what Corey just said. It shouldn't be slanted, but I also agree silence is not. Particularly when you're talking about historically marginalized or people who feel unsafe. They're not going to step out, right? Like, we all know that when people don't feel safe, they don't speak up. So pieces of best practices that we are giving up. Now, verbally, we have been told we will have a role in choosing the SRO. This contract does not give us a role in choosing the SRO. It says they will choose it for us. So we need to understand that. Discuss and define roles of the SRO through a collaborative process. Okay, we're gonna define it. Accountabilities, performance, evaluating who, how often. Again, they'll do their evaluation, we'll do ours, right? Like, that's our solution to that. The process to file a complaint, that's there twice. Data, I don't want to talk about data. We're going to have to collect our own, is what I've learned.
Right.
What I've learned is we are going to have to collect our own data. They are not going to provide data for us. Right? Fair? There's actually a wonderful graph about what are your goals and what to look for when you're monitoring for them. Gauge your starting point. I don't really know that we've done that. I would love to do that when we decide what we're measuring. Getting a starting point. And then the mechanism receiving complaints. So those are the big things that I had off of the best practices. Those are the pieces that I have been struggling with, is that I think we are giving up control, but I think we know what control we're giving up. And I think we're trying to build pieces on the side that we can to shore up those pieces.
And to be clear, the district attorney is comfortable with this contract.
Yes.
And if we are developing mechanisms for data gathering, because we're sharing with other districts nearby,
Yeah.
more information about it.
At this time, are you guys ready for vote?
I'm ready, but
Big
I'm open for
conversation.
more discussion if anyone wants.
Again, I'm not trying to rush us, but
Well, I'll just echo what Ellen said. I don't think this puts us in an ideal situation, but I think this gives us enough flexibility that we can do our best to make this work in a way that will be beneficial, that would be the best scenario for our district. Or ideally, we might have, much more control over the contract. This at least doesn't prohibit us from doing the things that we want to see from us, our stakeholders
Right, for that.
expressed.
Right. I'm gonna look at you again, if I can.
Sure.
What, how? Have we given you enough what? Have I given you enough what? For you to develop the how of building these pieces of stakeholder input, best practices. Again, it's not our space to be in the weeds with you to design all of that, right? Like, so what, how? Have I given you enough what
Yeah, absolutely.
to
Yeah.
understand what I'm asking of you?
It's gonna take some time.
Absolutely,
Right.
understandably, and I'm happy to share all the Google Docs in the world.
Yeah.
But, okay, that's what I need.
Do we have an idea of if this passes, do we have a time frame of when the district might get somebody in?
I don't, when I talked to the sheriff last one, he said as soon as they have board approval, they're ready to go. Now, what that means, I don't know. I know they've screened candidates for us, and they've not been happy with some people because they wouldn't have been a good fit for us, which I think is a good sign, that they're being cognizant of our needs and our wants as a community. So if we decide to move forward, then I will reach out to the sheriff tomorrow and see where we're at and then give you an update on the time.
Have they given you a sense of how long the training that they provide takes to get them to it?
And will they just provide a candidate, or will they tell you a couple people?
I don't know. I don't know what their candidate pool looks like right now.
The only thing that saves me is that picture again is
Well, again, there is a mechanism in the contract for registering our concerns about the SRO in place, developing a plan of improvement and changing it. So I think, we need to recognize that we have given up that control. This contract gives us no space to choose. They are choosing for us. Now, I agree with you, the fact that they have turned people away helps me to feel like they are choosing carefully and thoughtfully, so that helps me. But.
So what you're saying, in writing, technically speaking, we don't have that right. It's just verbal. Now, to echo something Corey said very early on in this discussion, I think this is a good thing. We have established, Bill, what's your committee called?
Inclusivity.
And I think this is one of those prime things that, that committee, that's what it's there for, things like this. I think if this moves forward, opportunities are there to always make it better. I feel, obviously, if I moved it, I feel like this is what is best right now. And I'm thankful for the county for giving us this option to pursue. Beyond that, this has been going on for months now, and anybody can look through any meeting, see what we've said.
Are
Exactly.
we ready to, I'm sorry.
If I can just clarify one thing that you told me the lawyers interpreted, just so we are clear on the interpretation of this aspect of one of the duties of the SRO, screen all persons entering the building or school grounds when in a position to do so and take necessary action to prohibit loitering and trespassing on school grounds. We interpret that as referring to visitors, guests, non-students. This would not be a screen of a student every day.
Absolutely not.
This would only be for people who are we're new to the school.
Yeah.
So at this time, I'm going to ask Jody to do a roll call vote.
Mr. Ames?
Aye.
Mr. Duclos? Mrs. Larson? Mrs. Jones? Aye. Mrs. Jacobson?
Aye.
Thank you.
This brings us to community participation. We have none online at the moment. There are people watching, so again, I've lost the camera. Again, if you would like to come to the podium, you are welcome to. Please remember that there is a time limit up here. If you'd like to come.
Still offering extra credit?
You guys are up, you're welcome to ask questions. No.
So just to explain a little bit about this meeting, we're not allowed to talk like this. We're not allowed to talk. We're not allowed to talk more than two of us ever at a time. It is considered a meeting. We can't do that unless it's, but that's what it is. And so that's why the conversations happen here, because this is the only time that we're legally allowed to have conversations. thing tonight.
There.
There's no participation online, and none of you are getting up front. Sort of it, so let's move on. Personnel. I made a motion to accept the resignation of Jessica O'Reilly as teacher aide busing effective September 8th, 28th, 2022, with sincere appreciation for her service to the district.
I'll move. Did you only have to stay so long?
Yes.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I need a motion to approve the leave of absence for childcare purposes for Haley Turner with tentative dates of April 14th, 23 to June 30th, 23 as recommended by the superintendent. Discussion will be an executive session. All those in favor?
Aye.
I need a motion to approve the appointment of Jennifer Inman as probationary office assistant 2 effective January 25th, 2023 as recommended by the secondary principal and superintendent.
Move. Second.
Discussion would be an executive session. All those in favor? I need a motion to approve the advisors and volunteers as provided for the 2022-2023 spring musical Big Fish with tentative dates of March 10th and 11th, 2023 as recommended by the secondary principal and superintendent.
I will be abstaining.
Just gotta get a second first.
Just, yeah, somebody move or second it other than Jenna.
I'll move.
I'll second.
So what I was going to say, which is what I have been told in the past, is that I need to acknowledge that there is a family member of mine on this list, however, I am not required to abstain.
I'm on the volunteer list.
So, okay, so you are actually on the
I'm
list.
on.
Okay, so I have a family member on, I noticed that earlier.
No, I'm not.
So I can say I have a family member on the list, but I've been advised I do not need to abstain from this one, so.
But that's not.
It's on the attachment though.
Advisors and
It says
volunteers.
and volunteers and the volunteers on volunteers.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Abstain?
Aye.
Well done.
I need a motion to approve Dora Ackerman and Kelsey Keeley, sorry.
But it's also Ammerman, not Ackerman.
Yeah, you guys know me in my last name, sorry. For the substitute list is recommended by the administrative team and superintendent. All those in favor? I need a motion to approve Elizabeth Martell, substitute, effective April 14th through June 23 as recommended by the superintendent.
I'll second.
The only discussion, because I know most people in executive session, there is a gap of a couple of days. Is that worrisome? I know we're not in school, but there's a gap in dates.
June 20th versus June 30th.
Yeah,
Or 23rd versus June
23rd to 30th. That means we have no.
Yeah, we're fine.
Yeah, but the 24th is graduation, so if anybody gets hurt.
We can have a substitute there, so she's got on the syllabus.
My only comment was that didn't last long.
Right? Good for her then.
Yes, thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I need a motion to approve Jared Dart to a 4-year probationary appointment as school effective February 27th, 2023 through February 26th, 2027, as recommended by the director of PPS and superintendent. The only discussion that we should have is that the start date is tentative, and it may need to be adjusted, and that would change the probationary end date. All those in favor?
Aye.
I need a motion to approve the recommendation of the committees on special education and preschool special education.
I'll move.
Second.
Discussion will be an executive session. All those in favor?
Aye.
Policies. Travis.
So this is a recommended deletion of policy, rescind it. Bill, if you'd like to speak to reasoning, you can, but I will say this, within our BOCES, there's only one other school district that has such a policy, just for context.
My only question, I'm totally fine with this,
Yeah.
with the exception of bus drivers are required to have a physical to maintain their license.
They-
So that is
yes.
separate
We've been through
from this.
Separate from this.
That was my only question, I agree, this is
That's already
completely.
established in education.
There's no benefit for us.
Now,
That's the first read. So
now the
that's-
part I'm not positive about, for a rescind of a policy, do we need a second read or?
You don't know, but I'm only going to use the
first and second read at the same board meeting if it's an emergency. I'm not gonna make a habit of it. That's okay with you.
I like that.
Great. Athletic report.
It should be embedded in the,
True, we don't go through them anymore, do we?
no,
Sometimes you read that.
that was before they were put up.
Any questions about the athletic report, other than congratulations to all those that are playing?
Athletes,
Yeah.
all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, I saw that, that's commendable.
Mm-hmm.
And thank you to our bus drivers for getting these kids and not having to cancel any sports. That's
So,
amazing.
yeah, my reoccurring question was referees, were there any postponements or cancellations of games?
There were rescheduling games, but no postponements.
And last month we talked about visitor behavior at games. How was that one going? Work in progress?
It's a work in progress.
Noted.
Depends on the opponent, where we're at.
But it is a concern.
It is a concern. Yes. Yes.
From on our end or on the visitor?
Both.
Or-
Both. We've unfortunately had some behavior at games that is not very
Yeah,
indicative of an HCS
that's not tolerable.
student. So,
Questions for the administrator's report?
I have one, and it's not on his report, so full disclosure, I gave him a little heads up, so that might be fair. Chris, I don't even know anymore, Chat GPT. So my question is it, or things like it, anything that public schools need to start being prepared for and knowing how to deal with it?
Yeah, absolutely it does. So for people who don't know, ChatGPT is an evolution of an artificial intelligence chatbot. Besides being a technology guy, I'm also a science fiction nerd. But I've been interested in chatbots for a long time. Surprisingly, they've been around for a really long time. But they've always been really, really dumb. But they're getting smarter and smarter as people are writing better and better algorithms. This one is an evolution of one that came out a few years ago, and there was a lot of reports in the news about how artificial intelligence and algorithms were racially biased, and only because these bots are programmed by people, so they're artificial intelligence, but they really run on if-then scenarios. Anyway, this next evolution is really, really impressive. It's a conversational-based bot, and the way that they trained it was they spent time asking it questions, and then they would reward the bot based on its answers, and so the bot got more and more sophisticated over time.
I just want to reward a bot.
What's that?
I just want to reward a bot.
So what you do is it gives you 3 answers and you choose the best.
Oh.
So then it gets smarter and smarter and smarter over time, and
Okay.
as the bots out there in the world, it'll only get smarter and smarter. It'll become self-aware.
Right, and then we're in big trouble.
Anyway, to answer
Those laws
your
will
question
provide
about
for
what it is, so yes, schools absolutely need to be aware of it. I've already met with all the English teachers about it, just so that it's on their radar. A couple of things that we've proactively done to sort of circumvent it. So at the moment, there is no technology solution to this, really. Because when you put a prompt into it, it generates unique text. So traditional plagiarism finders can't find it because it's not copying anything from the internet, it's generating text. Right? So it renders plagiarism detectors useless. So what can we do? Well, the first thing that we should do is hopefully all of your English teachers have talked to you about how this is still plagiarism. These are not your ideas. These have been generated by a machine. If you're caught using these tools, then whatever the punishment had been before for plagiarism, this would be the same thing. We have blocked it here with our internet filter, so anything on our network or any of our devices would not be able to use it. Again, probably many of you have your own, so that wouldn't stop them necessarily from using it. The company, so there's been some pretty high profile backlash to it. The New York City school districts came out strongly right away and made it it's the biggest school district in the nation, so they made a sort of big to-do about blocking it and worries about it. Universities are obviously very worried about it. If you get the chance to play around with it, it's pretty incredible.
Is your board report generated?
Not allowed.
But it can write and debug code. It can write poetry, not necessarily great poetry, but it can write songs.
My general understanding is just that you could tell it, write me a thesis on this book in the writing style of this author, and within 3 seconds it's there.
Yeah. And then you can actually polish that prompt. So then you would say, write me a 5-paragraph essay with a thesis. You know, the more accurate your prompt is, the more sophisticated the response will be. And it will only get more and more sophisticated over time. So the company has addressed this issue. They say they have a solution in the works so that schools can detect this text has been generated by a bot. I also noticed that some hacker wrote a script that would identify bot-written text. I guess there are commonalities that can be detected. And other things like teachers are smart. Right now, sometimes it's spitting out total nonsense that sounds like good sentences, but like you ask it about a certain historical event, like it'll write you a pretty good sounding essay, but somebody who knows what's happened knows that that's garbage, like that's not right. But you know,
So I guess-
Mr. Rose told me he's going to start asking to have everybody handwrite stuff.
So I guess on the tail end of your answer to this, I feel like, you know, state ag, NISBA, organizations like that will be at the forefront of this.
Yeah.
But I guess when the time comes, you know, if there's anything that a school board can do policy-wise to refine things,
Sure.
I would be interested in.
I think, you know, something simple, knowing that you guys do a lot of policy work, is just a couple of lines of text in our plagiarism policy about text generators.
Well, that's in our code of conduct.
Right? So, you know, we can specifically mention text generators because they're not going to go away.
Yeah.
The interesting thing about your comment about handwriting is we don't do a ton, we do learning of that, right? There is learning
Yeah.
through middle school-ish, but we're also teaching the elementary kids how to type at this point.
Yeah.
Right? And so,
Tests are going to be given.
That's right. They could also generate it with TextBot and write it out by hand. You can
Right.
hear that from me.
but
Maybe some of this.
But I mean, at work we were talking about it the other day, and the professor that was talking to us was saying that there's students that haven't actually written in 10 years because they've typed all of college, all of high school, and most of middle school. So there's people that really have not written. So to say all my papers have to be handwritten, that's actually a different challenge, and it's actually.
Yeah, I told them to slow it down.
Yeah.
I
But
don't.
I'm just saying that it also turns into a DEI issue.
Yeah. No, I don't think we need to wring our hands too hard.
And I'm not saying anything towards
Yeah,
Ms. Rose.
yeah.
I'm just saying that this was a conversation, I legitimately just had this on Tuesday.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting that this was brought up.
I think there are many other better classroom practices that you use to implement this.
Yeah.
Leading students through a writing prompt.
Yeah, no,
There's a lot of good ways.
I think there will be a technology
I kind of
solution.
apologize for asking, but, you know, just, you know, you brought us up to speed on what we need to be aware of. And I really
It's in
appreciate
this
it.
company's best interest, right, to not become some sort of pariah and to make sure that
Right.
it can be detected.
Other questions for Mr.
Well, I just, sorry.
There you go.
This is another example of why all of these programs and websites and apps that we use that mine our data, they're using all that data to create things like this. And so you can often think like, oh, what do I care if I'm not using this data, right?
You mean
and
I
it's not
should-
just this, it's all sorts of other things, right? I mean, your fitness tracker app you have,
I
right?
should
Like
take
that.
quizzes to see what kind of
Tracking
food
where
I
you go
eat.
and stuff like that. It's all using all this information to build things that they're using for proprietary and sometimes things you don't agree with. So it's always better to be careful about what you're letting track you and how. True. Because that's the product they're getting. When it's a free app, you're paying for something.
Other questions for Mr.
Can I just highlight something from my report? So Tanya Valancourt did give acceptance to the New York State Master Teacher Program,
Yeah.
which is, it's a lot of work on her part, on her own, to even be considered for it, but now that she's part of it, it opens up a lot of professional development opportunities, networking all through New York State, but mostly central New York area, but she's working with a lot of great educators and learning a lot of things. So that's a very exciting thing that she's part of.
Mark, I see in your report too, something else that kind of fits the grand scheme of things, the girls' basketball mental health awareness game.
Yep, so they had a mental health awareness game. The art classes made a bunch of posters, had them up in the gym. Ms. Merck, Dr. Hope, and a few others had a table set up with some different things to hand out. Green ribbons were given to people that wanted them. They had a minute to win it contest at halftime, so it was good.
Those posters are now hung up throughout the district as well, so. If you guys need to leave, you can leave. The rest of your classmates left.
Just know I was taking
Good
notes.
job.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you for coming till we told you. Thank the other ones for coming.
We will.
Mark, I have a question, I think it would be more for you. I'm curious, when we're soliciting 8th graders to build their 9th grade schedules, what education is given to them on the classes that are offered, especially the electives?
So they're actually starting to meet now.
That's why I'm bringing this up.
So they meet together as a group. They have a course handbook. Ms. Torrey will go over, typical pathways that students at 8th grade going to 9th grade. So typically these are the electives that 9th graders would take, highlight some of those electives. And then on the course selection sheet itself that they'd be filling out, those are listed there. And then they can refer to that new curricular document that we created last year for a little bit more information about each of those courses, or the course catalog.
And there is a way that they can get a copy of that.
Yeah, yeah. And,
I know there was a lot of
teachers have talked with
confusion.
kids too, or should be talking. I know they do it more at the once they get 10th, 11th, 12th, because there are more opportunities after you finish a few prerequisites with 9th grade. But they might be advertising some of their electives as well.
I just heard there was some confusion because the students were signing up for different things and they really didn't know what they were, and then finding out what they were and trying to
and
change things and stressing out.
They can always
So I was
come
just
ask
curious
me,
about
ask
that.
Ms. Torrey if there was any confusion.
Great. Thank you.
Can Matt give a budget update?
No.
I'm interested in this bond. If it can make the budget process go from 6 months to 3
Is
seconds.
this your update or?
must be
The budget
something
bond.
wrong.
You should write a budget bond.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, not a whole lot to report. There wasn't much pertaining to education in the state of the state. We haven't had any numbers yet. We're anticipating an executive budget proposal.
Why do you always steal my thunder, Matt? I was gonna
I'll
talk
jump
about
in.
that.
Okay. Specifically to us, and really all districts right now, the real challenge, and this is, I had a meeting with peers on Monday from other districts. The real challenge right now is figuring out where we stand and where we're going with regard to federal funding. So if you recall, we have all of these additional buckets of money that we've been able to add things. Some of those, the funds expiring in September of 23, some in September of 24. So the real challenge with budget development in the next 3 years, probably, is going to be the weaning off of those federal funds. And things that we've added, what do we prioritize for keeping? How do we keep it? How do we make it work? That is going to be a big challenge. These folks know that. We've had our initial discussions with each of the department heads, so they're aware of that. Bill and I are in the process right now of really updating what we said we were going to do with those funds, what we are doing. We're going to have a desk audit this spring, so it's timely in that sense too, to get things in order. That's going to be huge in budget development. The next big piece that I'll probably have for you pinned down pretty well by the February board meeting is our tax cap calculation. We're still waiting on some pieces of that. One piece that we have received recently in the last couple of weeks is the tax-based growth factor, which accounts for new property development added to the tax rolls. The good news for us is with the housing development up on the hill, I believe that's what's driving that. Our growth factor is higher than usual this year. I think it's going to add probably between 0.5% and 1% to the levy as far as the amount of the levy, plus additional debt service from the capital project. So I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but our allowable levy increase this year, I anticipate being higher than past years. So as far as generating revenue and retaining certain expenditures or adding expenditures back in the budget, that's a good thing. We'll have to pin down on that number, so it's going to be tough. And this was the fear 3 years ago and 2 years ago when all this federal funding came out is, yes, that's great, but when it goes away, what are school districts going to do? And a little big part of that is foundation aid, but I think Jen's probably going to touch on that too.
They do have.
It's a big question mark. If the state has gotten to where it is fully funding foundation aid based on the existing formula, which is 15 plus years old, so.
She's committing to the $2.7 billion.
She is.
So what does that mean?
What that means for Hamilton, who knows?
So they have a $2.7 billion need. But that's not great for us.
Matt, what were you saying, what this means for Hamilton?
We don't know what it is.
And we've been quote unquote fully funded or overfunded in foundation aid for a number of years because of our wealth and decline in pupil count.
And bad formula, that's what we said.
Yeah, so, you know, at the very least, we can hope for some sort of hold harmless provision where we get a minimal increase. That's what's happened in past years. Longer down the road, who knows?
Questions? Bill, your report, you want questions for you? You want to go over any pieces?
I just want to add a couple of things. I mentioned last month that we were entered into agreement with MACNY, and our first, we hosted a meeting here last Friday with all the component districts at MACNY, all the principals and guidance counselors from each of those districts, and our first visitation will be Wednesday. We have 12 students going to Briggs and Stratton with Johanna and Miss Daoud, and they're going to visit and have immersion at Briggs and Stratton. So they're going to tour the facility, they're going to talk about resume building, so it's going to be a good program. And then there's 2 other visitations that are being scheduled for the remainder of the school year.
Do you know where?
Don't know yet.
So, rewind. That is directly related to MACNY, or?
That is directly facilitated by MACNY. Yep. So
At a cost or not?
At a cost.
Okay.
Yep, which is
So they're not giving us a
paidable.
little freebie?
No, this is not a freebie. No. This is to cover the costs for MACNY to establish the relationships, to set up the scope and sequence of the program, to provide this work-based learning experience for the 4 districts.
How does a commitment to MACNY work? Is it, for example, we're committed to this. Have we given full commitment moving forward? Or?
This is a pilot for this year.
When you say this year, it means ending June 30th.
And June 30th, yep. So the 4 districts agreed to collaborate on this. That drives aid. So this is just a pilot for this academic year. And then if we want to pursue this, we will then enter an agreement for next year at an increased cost because it'll be for the entire school year.
Remind me again, what determines the portion each district pays? Is it on student involvement?
No, it's a set fee from MACNY that they have set to deliver this service to the districts.
And it's
yeah. So it's exciting for our kids. We met with them today, 12 kids. They seemed excited about it.
Yeah, I think it's a great
Yeah,
program.
yeah, so good things to come with that. The Jewel litigation is, we're starting to get increased correspondence from the Franz law firm, who is representing us through Farrar. They would like to, as part of the settlement agreement, meet with you in executive session either in February or March, to talk about the disclosure of the settlement. So whatever your preference is, if you don't have a preference, I'll just see if they're available. And then we'll need to take board action, I think the following month, to receive the settlement.
Just remember that if it's February, it would be the 16th,
Right.
not the 9th.
Yep.
Or,
Yep.
timeout, we have a special meeting on the 8th. Could an executive session for that be held?
Well, but that was only, we were only gonna pull one other person, other than the.
I understand.
I mean, if we can go with the main board.
I would go with
Yeah.
the board, yeah. Yep. Yep. And then two other things from the governor's address. She did acknowledge that the civil service system needs help, needs to be revamped. So, we have civil service positions here that are a challenge. So it's good that she publicly said that she would look at that and make efforts to improve the civil service agreement. And then school meals for all. So NISCUS, which is the New York State Council of School Superintendents, has been very vocal about the need to support free meals for all. And are pushing the governor to make that as part of her legislative budget. Sorry, am I taking your thunder?
I was like, look, I'm showing you Dell. I'm like, look, they're going right down my list.
Yell at him.
Yeah. But that's going to be, they project $190 to $200 million investment to provide free meals for students across New York State, but I think it's very important. So, more to come on that.
Do we use a BOCES coaster for DE&I work?
We do.
Because apparently they can come to faculty meetings, they can come to
They
all
can.
meetings.
Yep, we discussed this last month at our CSO meeting.
Okay,
So we're working on that.
perfect.
Yep. But we are a member of that coaster.
Thought we were. So.
Mhm.
Great, hopefully we can do that. Other questions for us?
We got a few, anyone else? All right, Bill.
Go for it.
Building capital projects, anything to report?
Moving along, our fax room is hopefully going to be turned over in the next couple of weeks to us, our family consumer science classroom. Installing countertops, the cabinets are in, all the appliances are here, so that will be the next turnover to us, will be that room. And then the LGI and secondary library continue to make progress. If you had the opportunity during the day to walk out here and see the new windows that were installed,
Oh, they're
beautiful,
Okay.
beautiful.
Great,
Yeah, it's coming along.
great. I don't want specific numbers here, but generally speaking, how is our legal budget for the year looking?
Good. Matt, you want
You don't want numbers?
to elaborate on
You can give me numbers, but I don't want to put you in the box.
We're fine.
Yeah.
I think we budget 20,000.
Mhm.
We're roughly 7,000 billed to date for the year.
Good.
For the general fund budget. We have, there are legal fees associated with capital project, contract review.
Right,
those
those are
are-
It's kind of a
Those are
complicated
billed to the
question.
project, so, but in terms of the budget, yes, it's fine.
All right, last question, but it's a 2 or 3 parter, Bill. Scheduling committee.
Mhm.
So, just for a little clarity here, to make sure I'm understanding things right. At a future board meeting, Mr. Riley and the scheduling committee will do a presentation on a schedule that they are recommending?
Mr. Riley will, not the committee,
Okay.
Mr. Riley, as our consultant, will present to you a schedule that they are recommending to me for adoption.
And that, I think, clarifies the second part. Just to be clear, the board will not be voting on a schedule.
No.
We would never.
No, I'm just,
It's nothing we'll ever.
No.
exactly,
No.
yeah, I just
No.
wanted to clarify that in
Yep.
my mind here. And last, when Mr. Riley does his presentation, obviously, the board will have the opportunity to ask questions about it.
Absolutely. Sure.
Thank you. I look forward to it.
Yep.
Other questions for Bill? Steering team update.
I don't have one. I think it got canceled. I was gonna be out of town for the one in December, and I think it got canceled anyway because of weather.
Oh, I know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so.
Long ago.
It does, it seems,
So you guys more end of the month or?
It must be, yeah. I don't, is there one in January? Because I was just looking on my calendar and couldn't find it.
Yeah, I think it's
Well, and also, we were also supposed to meet yesterday, but we moved.
26th, I want to say.
February 26th.
So we'll have an update next time.
Because the one in February is the same day as the new board meeting. Oh, it is the 26th, yes.
26th, yeah.
So I won't have an update until after January 26th.
Secondary was moved. Emerald Foundation was moved to next week. I will give an update though, they have a new member, and Bill will now be joining the meetings for, I'm gonna try to get them to switch their agenda around for the first part of the meeting, for when they talk about anything related, school related, all of the, what do they call it, applications that are submitted. So when they have questions, a lot of the times I actually can't answer them, even though that's really my role. But I'm not in the school every day, so I can't answer them, so I get back to them. And this way, they'll have their answers right then. So those are the two updates for that, but they're meeting next week. Jen, you are knowledge.
Okay.
Stole your thunder, but.
I know. So no, most of it was mentioned. It was surprisingly very light on education. I immediately messaged Bill after and said, like, was education mentioned at all? But if you look through her, like, 250-page book, you can, like, control F and, yeah, and find a few things. So, yeah, most of it was already talked about. They are making more investments in mental health and universal pre-K. So, and yeah, the civil service thing I think can be really good.
How will the universal pre-K change our pre-K?
It's very targeted.
Probably won't.
It won't
In terms
change
of level of funding,
It won't change it to a full day?
I think what they're talking about is funding.
Yeah.
And I don't think
It won't change it.
it'll
So
probably
it's to
be
continue
very,
investments.
very targeted, as it has been in the past.
Okay.
Which usually doesn't bode well for us.
What jobs do we have that are civil service jobs?
Most non-teaching positions. Yeah, just about all non-teaching.
And then just one more thing about the school meals. So the lobby day was Tuesday. No, it was the beginning of this week for the school meals lobby day. I did not make it. Work was too crazy. But they had a really big turnout. Some board members actually brought students from the district with them, so I guess several students showed up. And in addition to the meetings that took place with state legislators that day, 45 additional meetings so far have been set up with school districts and representatives and staff. So there is a really big push for that.
Thank you for all your work on keeping up on it.
Trying.
I've got a brief thing on knowledge.
Okay.
Starts as a thank you to Matt for his continued patience with me. I've learned that I've gained so much knowledge about how the district works by diving into the wormholes of the warrant reports. And I just think that just, sharing that with you guys, if you dive in, just send an email. You learn so much about school law, inner workings of the financial. So Matt, thank you publicly, and there's my knowledge.
Moms don't have that kind of patience.
You don't. Get a quicker
They just start
response
making
time.
stuff up. Yeah.
Wait, patience for me or?
Community participation, there's nobody in the room anymore, and no comments online. There are people watching, but I asked them to place their comments there, and they haven't yet, so we're going to move on. So, seeing none, I need a motion to adjourn to executive session. Hold on. We will discuss the particular history, the employment history of a particular individual. Thank you.
I'll second.
All those in favor? Aye.